Welcome to your weekly edition of our deep dive into the new product release at Blending Room, which this week is Adado. It is a grade 1 natural process coffee from Ethiopia and the first natural process coffee that I have roasted on the Loring, the first from Omwani, and there are a bunch of other firsts as well. I am filming this at an obscure time of day. I would usually do this at 6 a.m, but today I'm having to go down to South Wales for a family event and I'm having to do this way more forward than I'm actually used to doing. So you might hear Jules, our production assistant, in the background packing some coffee, so excuse the coffee bean noise. There may be people who come through and walk into the set, and really frustratingly, my wheel fell off my table, so everything might skew down to that way. So apologies in advance. As mentioned, this coffee was brought to me by Omwani Coffee Importers. They are based in York and Dave Burton is my contact there. Dave is a really nice Yorkshireman. If you ever meet him, you'll know exactly what I mean. I cut these coffees towards the back end of last year and I selected 2 natural processed Ethiopians from Omwani, Adado being the first release and the grade 1, the other one's a grade 2 and that'll come out in the next couple of weeks. So for those people who are new here, I talk my way through the coffee, I will describe the roast profile, I'll taste it and I'll convey how I think you could brew it at home and then wrap everything up at the end. So without further ado, let's get into the first section, which is talking about the roast profile. So before I show you the profile on the screen, there's a couple of disclaimers. Number 1, this is an expensive coffee. Number 2, the expensiveness gives me some trepidation when I'm roasting it for you lot. Number 3, it was my first grade 1 natural process Ethiopian on the Loring. So there's a lot of, I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I approached this. I did 3 batches. I'm going to show you the batch that I think has performed the best. In due course, once I've done some proper analysis on the 3 batches, I'll come back and we'll do a little review of why I've got to this particular profile. Another caveat is that today is Thursday. I only roasted this on Tuesday, so this is as fresh as can be. So when I get to the tasting bit, we just have to remember that this coffee needs to open up a little bit more for it to be a touch more complex. That aside, let's talk about this profile. So on the screen, you'll see the usual pyramid heat application approach. So that's lots of energy building up into the Maillard phase of reactions. And then when I hit about 180 degrees Celsius, when the coffee beans become a more tan-like color, I then like to start to taper away. I wanted a short post-first crack development time with this particular coffee because it's a natural process coffee from Ethiopia. There'll be a lot of reducing sugars. It'll be very easy for me to extend the roast beyond where I want it to be and end up with too dark a coloration. I needed this to be light so that it is as expressive as it possibly can be. The end temperature for this batch was 212.8 degrees Celsius. The total roast time, 90 minutes and 24 seconds. 1 minute and 26 seconds post first crack development time with a development time ratio of 15.2%. I managed on this 3rd batch to achieve an ever declining rate of rise curve. This was incredibly tough because post first crack, all this coffee wanted to do was race on in temperature. It was very difficult to rein that thermal progression in. And if I hadn't managed to come up with a solution, I would have had a coffee that would have just been more developed than I'd actually want it to be. I wouldn't display the types of complexities that I'd want to display for a natural process from Ethiopia. The bean curve is as expected, nice and tidy. There's not a lot that I would want to adjust with this particular profile other than explore whether I can apply more heat faster. So possibly get to my highest temperature input quicker. So on this batch, it was 4 minutes before I reached 90% total gas. And maybe if I pulled this through to 3 minutes, A, I'd have a faster roast, and B, I might excite some additional development within the cup. But importantly, I must remember to taper away quickly so that there isn't this huge buildup of temperature towards the end of the roast. As I mentioned, this was the tidiest of the 3 batches that I performed, and I'll discuss all 3 of those batches at another point in the future when it's more applicable to do a roast profile analysis of 3 different batches for the same product. Anyway, with profiles done, let's taste. I'm gonna bring your attention back to the fact that this is only 2 days off roast, and that is not when I like to taste these coffees. I really need them to have minimum a week, maybe 4 days. 2 days is too fresh. But that aside, let's get into it. First, we're gonna smell. So, creaminess. There's a little bit of hazelnut in there as well, which is surprising because I didn't expect that type of character to be within the cup. And I've got to ask myself, is that the freshness or is that the coffee? I don't know. We'll find out as this coffee progresses through time. So let's have a taste. Okay, so the first thing that I get with this is a really interesting raspberry-like acidity. That I think is going to develop more through time, and it complements this creamy type of character in the cup. There's also a very prominent black tea note as well. That's actually the thing that's lingering around on my palate at this point in time. So when it comes to descriptors around the character, I want to say black tea, and I want to say raspberry acidity, and I'm also getting some stone fruits in there as well. When this batch was a little warmer, about half an hour ago, there was a sweet, sticky Victoria plum brought together with that creamed hazelnut and black tea vibe. It's very complex, and I think this complexity is going to develop wonderfully over the coming weeks. So what about the finish? Actually, there's a little bit of chocolate in this. You tend to get some chocolate characteristics with coffees from Ethiopia. Way back in the days when I first got involved in roasting coffee for my father, Ethiopian Haraz, like they were winey with chocolate characteristics. It's not winey, this coffee isn't winey at all, but Ethiopia does display these chocolate notes inside the cup, and I do get that on the finish. That may wane and disappear over the next few days as the black tea, as the plum, as the raspberry come through, but we'll see this into next week when I cut these batches on Monday. Okay, so that's the flavor. How would I brew this? Well, this was a bulk filter brew, as I would usually do for these tastings, because that's how a lot of A, the coffee I enjoy is brewed, and B, how a lot of my customers brew at home. So it's really good to taste this through the eyes of you. Because I have such a strong leaning on filter coffee, that's where I'm going to advise to drink this. The tea-like quality in it is interesting and would be somewhat disguised if you had this as an espresso or a full immersion. That's not to say that I wouldn't have this as a cafetiere, because the plum notes in this, the stickiness of it, I think would work really well together. At this point, 2 days off roast, there's enough body within this cup to say that it would suit something like an espresso. You'd get lots of the boozy, fruity characteristics associated with a natural processed Ethiopian. So you've got to be okay with fruit characters and fruit notes within the cup, because remember, in an espresso you 10x the experience, you 10x the acidity, you 10x the fruit character. So fruity this is, you must enjoy fruit if you're going to drink it as espresso at home. This would also suit things like a clever dripper. I am going to use this as a clever dripper whilst I'm away. It will also suit things like an AeroPress as well. AeroPress would actually be a super way to brew this. You'd get some of the body, you'd get the complexity because the filter paper cleans that up. So maybe that's where I would go. Bulk filter brew or Hario drippers plus AeroPress for this particular coffee. Okay, that's about enough of me talking about Adado. It is a grade 1 natural process coffee from Ethiopia. It is very fruit forward in flavor characteristics that display raspberry, plum, black tea, and some honeyed, creamy chocolate thing on the finish. It is available online now. You can pick it up at Beverley Market between 8 and 4 on Saturday, and it's available at the roastery between 9 and 5 Monday to Friday. I hope this video wasn't as much as a hatchet job as I feel that it has been. Enjoy your coffee, have a great week.